If that's okay with everyone. My name is Margaret. I'm with Indianapolis's Teachers Treasures, and I'm going to try to facilitate a conversation today with some really awesome humans regarding where are we with fund development in this crazy time around the world and around certainly the network. I love this quote, and Amy Cheney just referenced it, that I pulled it from TJ McGovern's webinar that he did through the National Bank of Indianapolis, and I don't know who else shared it, but if you obsess about donors, the dollars will continue to come. If you obsess about dollars, the donors will continue to go. And I think that's a really good mantra for anybody to remember, that when we are in fear, when we're in fear of and concern and worry about, you know, what the next step will be, or who's going to have, or will we have enough funding for X? Focus on your humans, focus on those relationships, focus on the people that create goodness for you. And I think that then the good things will come from that. So Alice, why don't we start with you in an introduction, and then you can turn it over to Myra, then to Michael, and then to Joel, please.
My name is Alice Forbes. I'm the Executive Director of Schoolhouse Supplies. I just celebrated 5 years on the job. Hello, other resource centers. I'll turn it over to Myra.
I'm Myra Camacho, Development Manager at Schoolhouse Supplies here in Portland.
You're muted, Mike.
I took that off. Sorry, everyone. Good to be with you. Mike McCollum, Chief Advancement Officer with the Hillsborough Education Foundation here in Tampa.
And I'm Joel Wright. I run the LP Pencil Box down here in Nashville, Tennessee.
And Josh Whiteside was going to be with us today from Pittsburgh, but like what the world that we live in, he had an emergency situation this morning, and so Joel's going to step in from the perspective of Nashville with us today. And these webinars are really conversations. And the one thing that it's important to note is we're all available to each other as much as possible. But that's what a network is an opportunity to learn and grow from each other. And then if you do have a particular issue that you need help with, feel free to put it on the chat as well, and we'll try to connect you with somebody that maybe could solve that problem with you or for you. It's just what we want to be able to do. So the other thing at the end of the day for us here is, if you have other ideas or things that you would like to see webinars launched on as far as a particular topic, feel free to put that in the chat. Joel is recording this if you needed to share it with anybody, but we'll also have your notes and the thoughts that you guys have about how we can continue these conversations down the road on any topic. I mean, it's whatever we want it to be. So what we'd like to start out with, and I was saying this earlier, it's not that I wanted to be negative, but when it comes to fund development staff, you know, that labor in a very difficult time, particularly during COVID, some of us were working in the office, most were working from home, this try to, you know, work virtually and so on. Did you happen to have any impact staff-wise? Did you lose any staff for a period of time or for a permanent situation that impacted your program? Alice, how's your staff doing?
We have 4 full-time staff and part-time staff, and we had already, fortunately, as part of a longer-term plan, been stockpiling cash for other reasons, hoping to do some capital improvements. So we were able to keep all our staff on. What we didn't do until the last minute, when we knew we could afford it during summer fundraising, was bring on additional support for our summer fundraising campaign, which we would have done sooner normally, but without the confidence that the revenue is going to come in, you know, you don't plan till the last minute.
Right, indeed. Mike, what's happened down in Tampa?
Yeah, honestly, we feel very fortunate and blessed through this time. You know, I know many others out there, whether it's for-profit or nonprofit, have had to make those tough decisions of you know, whether it's laying off staff or furloughing staff. Again, we feel very fortunate through the pandemic. We have not had to, you know, let go of any staff or furlough anybody. And some of that, I think, in which we'll get into a little bit deeper into our other discussion questions, I think we really found an opportunity and a niche to really step up in an area and be a leader in the community in terms of responding to being there for the needs of our students and teachers during a pandemic. And as a result of that, we were really able to garner some additional fundraising efforts there that I think helped sustain us. So we'll get into more of that later, but we were very fortunate.
Good. Joel.
In Nashville, we did let go of some staff. We're in the process as the PPP money ends here shortly. We let them know a few months ago that their positions were going to be eliminated. So we lost a marketing person, and then we're going to be outsourcing a lot of our finance work to try to make that cheaper. We made all the decisions based on where we could keep without losing any of the programming that we did. We also took leadership positions, took deferrals. But fortunately, we have been doing well enough on getting we planned for the worst case scenario, but we've already been able to pay back the deferrals at this point on salaries. And yeah, we're just looking forward, and we just did not want to be holding the bag a year down the road. Like really I think our big economic concern isn't necessarily the immediate. We've gotten a lot of COVID funds, but if the recovery isn't immediate, what our next year FY22 is going to look like is almost the bigger worry at this point.
So for those of you who are on the call, I put the questions in the chat box right at the top if you want to follow what we're going to be. And there's no rhyme or reason to the order of my questions, but when we talk about balancing your funding, what do you think you had to move away from normal operations to cover COVID-related kinds of costs? Alice, you want to start with that, or Myra?
You know, that's a good question. I mean, we just took if we don't have to spend it right now, we're not going to approach. And at the same time, our COVID, I mean, we have such a small staff, and we don't really spend money on much of anything other than school supplies, our facility, and then third salaries. So I don't have a great answer to that, but other than to say, you know, like always, we just really watched expenses and then, you know, hoped against hope the revenue would come in. And yeah, it is more expensive to do things with fewer volunteers. You know, we've had to have outsource more. We've had to purchase, you know, like bags to individually package supplies in and that sort of thing. So it's more expensive. I'm not even sure long term. We're still trying to figure out how much more is it going to cost? How much more do we have to purchase because we didn't have product coming in through supply drives? That's going to be the biggest expense.
You mentioned boxes when we chatted earlier. Why do you need more boxes?
So with, I know some parts of the country, teachers are able to come back into your free store, not here. So everything has to go out. Nobody can come in. So we've been creating kits basically. And, you know, typically just like taking your reusable shopping bag to the grocery store, teachers bring their own bags. We always have some boxes, but now we need hundreds and hundreds of bags and boxes. So the limited volunteers we're able to have on site can pack kits. So, so far we've only had to purchase, you know, Ziploc type bags for sorting, but if anybody has a great source or a great idea for free boxes and bags, we've gotten them in quantities of like 100 here and 100 there from community partners, but not, I need like tens of thousands.
Mm-hmm. Mike, was there any change in how you've been spending money?
You know, it's interesting. Not too much. I think for us, it goes back to what I was saying with the first question. Sort of, we've really identified an opportunity in our community to really step up and really sort of be a conduit to help bridge the digital divide here in Hillsborough County. So we really jumped into that work immediately, partnering with our school district. And what we found is the community was very responsive to that. You know, folks wanted to respond by volunteering, but they also stepped up with writing some checks and in a big way, to the point that was really able to help us sustain through our work during this time. So we feel very fortunate about that. In terms of some of the needs, though, it's very applicable to us. We need bags, right? Our Teaching Tool Resource Center operation, we depend heavily on our volunteers. Or it's a team of 3 or 4 staff that run it. So in order to sustain, we really depend on that group. And obviously with the social distancing, we've adapted and limited the number of volunteers we can have in the building. So we've really tried to think creatively of how we can do that. But same type of thing. So we're going to our grocery store partners. Publix down here in Tampa has been a big help, but they can't even give us the amount of bags we're used to getting because there's a shortage on their end too. So we've been talking to any and everybody of our partners and kind of hodgepodging it together, but we're trying to make it work. But very similar to Alice's story up there.
I will say that here we've had a nice influx recently on the volunteer side with university and college students that need service hours, and they're being very flexible through the programs around. We have several schools here in Indy. So that might be a really good look at the honors programs and so on, because these kids all they have to do so many hours. So if you need kids to, stock boxes and throw them in the back of vehicles or whatnot. But you did mention, Mike, that things have stepped up. Funding sources have stepped up. I know that, a variety of grants have been awarded to us, whether it be through chambers or through bigger foundations. But what other stepping sources? I'd ask all of you to answer that. But Mike, I'll start with you. What has, outside of the community, like what specifically have you been sort of surprised by that, how generous people have been?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it's sort of this digital divide thing. I think it's one of those things we've known has been there for a long time, but obviously with COVID coming, it really hit us all hard, and everyone was forced to respond to it. And I think it really jolted the entire community. So what we saw, we've had partners, for example, that have been with us for a long time, partners that have provided volunteers and done supply drives for us, but hadn't really contributed to the level that they did during the midst of the pandemic. Again, one, because I think it really moved people, but two, I think they sort of found that it was a passion area for them. So again, we had a number of major corporations, major foundations that we partnered with for a long time, but this really sort of took their support and participation with us to a new level, and they've been with us throughout the entire time. So it's sort of like we had within our own coffers, in a way, we had a whole stable of people that really took their support to another level.
Joel, how about you?
We've been very fortunate as we've lost a number of, traditional corporate donors, as they just have made that call to be like, hey, we can't participate. Dollar General, which is in our backyard, really stepped up. They gave about 150% of what they normally do for us this year. And really our biggest surprise one actually came in working with our local district here, and we were able to get about $750,000 in care money to buy kits for all the kids. And so it changed we almost shut the store down for 2 months to just build a kit for every kid in the whole district. So still finishing up that project. So that definitely changed. I became a warehouse manager at that point solely. Wow.
Myra, any nice stories that have come out of Portland for you of funders that surprised you or made you happy one day?
Yeah, I think we've had a couple, corporate or organizational funders, but I think the thing that surprised me the most was the generosity of the individual donors. We've seen a lot of people, donate beyond what I thought we were going to get from individuals. I was like, oh, we're just going to get, I was estimating that we were going to get a lot of little donations, but they're actually like 100 plus and more from individuals, and a lot of first-time donors as well. So I think that was like a really good news and a really happy surprise that, there are such generous folks, especially in first-time donors as well.
Alice, do you want to speak to the slide? Alice, do you want to speak to the slide? You're muted.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. User error. Oh, say you can see the slide. It sounded like Myra was talking to it. We have slides, but they're like random. So no, just this supports just what Myra was talking about. We found a lot of our longtime funders, and yeah, so foundation funding was something that traditionally we hadn't done a lot of until I got here, but we had a few foundations that have been supporting us for almost our whole 20 years. And you know, we were in a very good cash position going into the COVID crisis and the lockdown, and that definitely worked against us. So ironically, for all those years, all the foundations said they wanted to see that you had 6 months of cash on hand. And maybe rightly so, the folks getting funding had like 2 weeks of cash on hand. But there's also such a focus on immediate needs. And while we did step into that space, you know, I mean, you can't argue with healthcare and hunger.
Let's move on to, because we've chatted a little bit. I think this is interesting that foundations that when they saw that you were fine and you're doing hunger, that was, I know hunger really took precedent a lot of, for us anyway, but we were also in a good financial situation, and we just even didn't know if we should apply for the PPP, honestly, because we were in such a good spot. So I wanted to know if you guys could, let's move off of COVID and let's talk about your donor management tool or your CRM. And let's share what platform you use, and we'd like to have your opinion on its functionality and just what you use or what you haven't been able to use from it within COVID or all the time.
Myra, do you want to talk to oh, did you say Mike? I'm not even listening.
Oh, no, go right ahead.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Myra, do you want to talk to ours, and I'll share the slide here? I'll get it right this time.
Sure. Yeah, we use eTapestry, which is a Blackbaud system. I think I would give it probably like a 3.5 out of 5. I think it's pretty easy to use as like a data capturing, data management tool. I think over the last, since I started at Schoolhouse Supplies, I was working with a consultant that does database management. And, without her, I don't think I would have been able to really understand the query and reporting functions of eTapestry. The good thing about it is that you can really customize a lot, but then that means like, oh, you really have to know the system to learn how to customize reports and all that. I think overall it's a pretty easy system to use and to pull lists. I think as we move on, we're becoming a little bit more sophisticated in our segmentation of donors, and I think that's where the crux of the system is going to come through, and like see if it's going to be capable to move on with us as we grow.
I would love us to have a future conversation about the individual donor and the donor management and another webinar. I know there's some seasoned veterans on the webinar that have done it in different ways, and for us, the individual donor is a new concept. We've been around 20 years, and just cultivating a major gift and all those kinds of things is new to this organization, and it's been a good ride. But I think it'd be great to share some other information from each other. Joel, what donor management tool do you all use?
We use Salesforce for everything. The pros are obviously the 10 free seat licenses for nonprofits that they offer out. We have spent quite a bit of money over the last 2 or 3 years contracting people to build out thoughtful custom objects, because it's one that if you try to go in and really do your create with the nonprofit pack exactly how you want, if you're not experienced with it, you can create a lot of dead fields and really make for some waste. But we do it quite a bit. Our teacher store is part of a larger program that does partnerships in the community. So it's great for us to be able to have both personal information for these people plus all their corporate information, since we partner businesses with schools. So
And I would offer those of you who are listening in, if you feel to put it in the chat box, who do you use? What platform are you guys using? Mike, what does Hillsborough use?
Yes, we use Razor's Edge and Razor's Edge NXT. It also syncs with we have Financial Edge too on the accounting side, so the synchronization there works really well. It's interesting for us with Razor's Edge. In some way, we're still kind of scratching the surface of the capability of Razor's Edge. It's in some ways it's almost so big that kind of going in, depending as an organization, you kind of want to reassess if you need everything that Razor's Edge can do for you. Because again, we're still trying to get to full usage of our platform. And sort of what's delayed our process a little bit, I think when we first got it, sort of predating my time and the current team on board, in some ways we weren't really utilizing the database the proper way. So we've kind of had to spend some time unwinding some bad practices within the database and then sort of rebuilding our efforts. So we're coming out the other end of that now. And as others have said on the call, we have worked with some local consultation because these systems can get really, really intricate. It's not just as simple as I want to run this report. You got to know what to do, how to do certain fields, exporting stuff and then importing stuff back into your system. It's a very delicate process. So yeah, but in terms of functionality, I would probably give Razor's Edge for us, I'd say about a 7.5 out of 10. Sort of reserving the point that that could grow once we get into some other pockets and really start utilizing the database to its full capacity. But one of the new things we've started using is trying to run and track our appeals through the system, our donor appeals. So that's the new frontier we're in right now.
So most of us here work in very small arenas. We have, 5 employees, if that. I know that you guys with Hillsborough are working with a bigger team because it's the entire foundation.
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree that it's incredibly important to have one person on your team really drill down on how to use whatever it is. You need a master. You need a person that's really dedicated to it. And we have that right person for us, that she likes the drill down, and we're using Bloomerang. We use Bloomerang because it's easy for people like me. It's very intuitive, except it doesn't do a lot of push out to you. You have to engage with it. It's very, very affordable, but it is pretty darn easy for anybody to kind of get in and get out of there. You do need a master though. You've got to have somebody that can get in there and pull those reports and so on. But we're trying to figure out how anytime we do an appeal or whatever, that there is that connectivity there. But again, it's the hard part is 4 or 5 staff members will never become authorities on it, but you've got to have somebody on your team that is, for sure. Bloomerang, it looks like several of the folks that are on the call use Bloomerang. It's based here in Indy, I believe. They have, and the other part of it is it's just tutorials. I tried to teach myself, but finally I just ask a lot of questions. They're really good that way. So you need somebody in the building that can manage it. And that is your donor, manager. That's a person that's really checking on that person. So I was wondering about, real quick, of any of these, and from the group that's listening, are there any awesome functionalities from your platform that make your life easier? I'd asked about, do you produce your acknowledgments directly from the platform, or I do mine personally, because ours does not edit. But is there any functionality that makes your life easier from your platform?
I was going to say on eTapestry Week, I think you can edit pretty well. I think there's some restrictions on like exactly how pretty you can make something, but I think we can make something pretty enough to be enticing to a donor. So I like that capability of it, and we're able to have like multiple types of receipts. So if we wanted to make something really specific, like this is for our KGW supply drive, we can do that. If we want to do something this is a general donation, then we can do that as well.
Do you want, I know one of the things we were going to talk about also was like fundraising successes. And we've really tried, we've always had individual donors, with lots of retired teachers who donate, but we, like Myra coming on board was part of some very intentional capacity we've been doing. to build our fundraising capacity. And I can share one of the slides I have is our, like how we are doing donor segmentation, which I realize is like old hat for a lot of more sophisticated development departments, but you know, it's been a big deal for us and it's made a big difference. And you can only do that with a good donor database. I mean, you need good people too, but it would take.
Can you show us that slide?
So
No, and again, there's so few of us that are that sophisticated. I mean, we don't have the time, honestly. I'm sure Karen Calder's probably stuffing boxes right now because she's got to get this stuff out the door. You know, we just aren't having that luxury of time right now to be able to do that deep dive.
All right, so here is donor segmentation, and you know, we are a small staff, and we were talking before the call that we have, it seems like we just, you know, hope that things will work out, and often they do. I mean, we haven't gotten 10,000 boxes donated, but you know, other things have gone really well. And because of that, even though our revenue has been strong over the last few years, and we've come out of a multi-year deficit situation, I have been reluctant to add too many additional staff because we have so many one-time revenue opportunities. So what we've really done is tried to focus on how do we build out some of this capacity, and like Myra mentioned, bringing her on board at the same time we had a consultant help us figure this out. So we, you know, it's cheaper than having a whole nother staff person, and maybe it's not ideal, but it's the way we've done it. And I'll let Myra, if you want to talk about how we've done this now over the last year. I mean, we used to just run our mailing list, pray that, you know, only half the addresses were wrong, and send out a mail appeal. But I'll let Myra talk about how we're doing it now.
Yeah, so I think last year when I started for our summer appeal is kind of where we started the segmentation. And I did that all on my own, just playing around with everything on eTapestry. And then our consultant came in at the second half of the year for year end to make it a little more stable. And so now we have these segments that I can pull really easily. And I think that's led to keeping that in mind as well, because then we had a last minute like fundraiser when the schools shut down because of COVID, and those people that donated at that time got moved into like these segments as well. So it's I think we're turning it into I don't know, something that feels very like it's a natural flow of, you know, this is where we're putting people and moving people up and all that.
That's great. I wanted to mention to everybody that if you have a question, you can put it in the Q&A box as well. I'm going to come back to the question we've got in there right now, Dylan, so stand by when we come talk about using volunteers. Anybody else want to mention, Mike or Joel, anything about your platform that makes your life easier or functionality? I think anything?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, Joel. I'll follow up after you.
With ours, we definitely do the segmentation where we have it emailed for the very small donors that just automatically goes out. We print letters over, I think, I forget if it's $50 or $100 to send out. And then we have it where it will separate the print on the report and let us know which ones get above, because then we obviously have the CEO signature, board signatures, handwritten note on that letter. And that's really what we kind of started doing. They get the big form, just receipt letter, but then we'll do handwritten notes for our bigger donors. But the report tells us exactly which ones that come out that, like, and we do it weekly on Fridays, and we just go through and we either call a board member, get them in, or forge their signature if we have to. But yeah, we do have a day where we spend about an hour just doing that once a week, and then we have somebody just take it to the post office all in one run. Just trying to stay on top of it.
Joel is recording this presentation, guys, and we'll put it on Basecamp. I only have access to the executive directors, but Joel, you could post it on the other Basecamps as well, answering Mary Lee Baxter. Mike, what were you going to mention?
Yeah, just a couple of things I think to continue on with the theme. So glad my other panel members mentioned donor segmentation. And I just think about the other theme of us all is size of our organizations. You know, we're not massive, you know, organizations with a bunch of staff. So the donor segmentation has been super helpful for us because while we want to do every single thing and connect with our donors every single way, we're just simply not big enough to do that. So it's helped us to organize our stewardship as well and thank donors at different levels in different ways. To, again, make sure we're touching all of our donors, but you know, while also understanding we can't do it all. So that's been a helpful tool for us in Tampa as well. And again, functionality. We do a lot of our stewardship activity tracking through our system. You know, keeping our detailed contact with our donors and sort of the new frontier we're going into now. Now, that's the other side of our CRM is, you know, with Razor's Edge, there are all kind of additions and things you can buy to add on to your operation, to your database. So there's things like, you know, email finder and phone number finder and wealth finder within the system that we're starting to look into which ones would fit best for us. But, you know, we've got so many donors in our database already, and we talk a lot about cultivating new donors. Our discussion is, well, we got a lot of people already in the database. We need to sort of mine deeper on and try to figure out if there's opportunity to grow them as a donor. So those are some capabilities within Razor's Edge we're looking into right now.
Terrific. Well, you're going to lead us down the path of stewardship. And I love this topic. I'm always in awe of folks with, again, we're wearing a million hats. Karen Calder, now she's shredding donor cards or something she mentioned, but when do we find the time to be creative and unique and give that energy? I saw on Allison Myra's piece that they do a lot of handwritten notes based on the level of giving. I am horrible at writing handwritten notes for a variety of reasons. And so I saw on an example of somebody's webinar of something to use, you know, that you can send the text to some company and then they can design the thank you card, the personal card, which is spending money, which is counter to what we're trying to do, but at least it's a personal note. But I'm curious about any unique stewardship, whether it's COVID or not, that you're using, again, with a small staff, a small board, trying to just keep up with showing the love and engaging these people, because again, we want to keep those people knowing how much we love them and appreciate them. So any ideas from the team here of things that you've done? And Alice, I don't know if you've got a slide for this.
I think I might. Let me look.
Why don't we see it? Yeah, stewardship, you know, really, we've been having our board calling people right now, which has just been simple but beautiful. And of our 20 board members, I would say 5 are really good at making phone calls, and we're fine with that. Karen is saying they send a magnet of their logo out to new donors. I'm sorry, she said we send a magnet of our logo for all new donors as part of their welcome kit. And I'd like to know what else is in your welcome kit, Karen. So feel free to type that while we got Alice showing us what they've been doing for stewardship.
I'm making a note about welcome kit.
Yeah, well, Karen, type it in.
That's great.
Okay.
So, you know, we have the segmentation, and that has helped us. And but Myra, she's not only like our database guru and really good at that kind of left brain thinking, she's also the key to like this like very schoolhouse supplies-y heartfelt donor acknowledgement, which, I mean, it's kind of, we're a grassroots organization and we're not completely scrappy, but we're pretty scrappy. But we want things to look nice and we want them to be meaningful. And I think that's really the sentiment that Myra has brought to us. So we, you know, like all of you, we get kid art, and those are awesome to be able to tuck into some of these acknowledgements. We also have gotten a little more sophisticated, and maybe some of this looks familiar to some of you. I'm sure we copied it from a number of your organizations, but Myra mentioned our donors who donated for the first time this spring, you know, we, like many of you, had to individually package our school supplies. Here's a little photo of one of the distributions, and Myra put together this awesome thank you that we were able to email out, since particularly at the beginning of COVID, you know, it was like nobody, you know, everybody was afraid to open the mail. I mean, we're sending a lot of mail again, but this is this beautiful email that we were able to send out with photos, and it's made a difference. And then we've also really tried to bookmark all of our campaigns now with some sort of graphic. And this one, we're going to have to do it differently, but our annual backpack program, we've always had lots of volunteers for it. And so we've calculated not only the value of the supplies that we've distributed, but also the value of volunteer time. So a business's $10,000 investment really returns, you know, $40,000, say, back to the community. And we've had year over year, when we've met with funders to wrap up from the campaign, they've described it as gold. Like, we've had multiple funders say, point to that back page and say, this is like gold for them, to explain the impact of the program and why they should come back the next year. So I don't know, Myra, if you want to add anything else about our stewardship, but these are just a couple examples.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm glad someone brought up a welcome kit, because that's something we were definitely gonna try to explore. And I think the magnets are a good thing too, because we have so many kid thank yous. Like, someone on our staff was saying, like, it'd be good to have a magnet, because then they could hang the kid thank you on their fridge. So I think that's a really good idea. I think we can move on to be a little bit more individual thinking. So I don't know, with the time and things happening, right? Like, we're dealing with wildfires here and all that. If anything else, kind of natural disaster is going to happen, but I hope we have some breathing room where we can really explore kind of a welcome kit, or I think we can really showcase a little bit more of a thank you to our sustainers and grow that program as well. So I'd be interested to see if anyone else has like a sustaining program, and if a monthly sustainer, if that's been affected by COVID or anything. You know, we don't have enough, I think, to really see if there's an effect or not.
And Myra, I think you bring up a good point, but we believe that our partners and our donors are giving us a little grace as well. Mm-hmm. As far as, you know, we can only keep up so much. So we're doing our best. I think people are giving us grace. I wanted to mention that Terry Johnson, hi Terry from Wichita, he said we have all teachers fill out a thank you card as part of their checkout process. Then we stuff these in our donor letters. If they're really good, we'll photocopy them and use them for other donors. It's fun to see these hanging on the walls in donors' offices and lobbies, which is awesome. The magnet is a popular idea. Classroom Central has a welcome series for new donors. It starts with the first gift with the letter receipt and the magnet, and then a PS invitation pre-COVID to attend an open house. By the way, we're doing an open house, and maybe you guys, David's renamed ours called Show and Tell, and we're going to do mini ones here in October, just 3 or 4 people at a time. That's our ability, hopefully, to steward some folks. Amy Kopp has asked about using personalized video thank yous. That's been very trendy right now. I'm hoping to see if any of you guys have used videos, but very, very trendy to get a real personal message out there. Mike or Joel, did you guys want to add anything to some fun stewardship ideas?
Yeah, and I love the ideas that heard so far. So similar to the checkout, we have a process for our Teaching Tools Resource Center. Any teacher that comes and shop, we have sort of packages that they can take back to their classroom. Now this was pre-COVID when teachers were shopping, so they're doing pickups, and we're doing kind of contactless, giving them supplies. But we have these packages, and inside we give teachers instructions on having their students create thank you notes and cards for the particular donors that support the resource center. They then send them back to us through school courier mail, and then we get them out to our donors. So it's a really nice experience to get something done specifically from the students, thanking the donors for their support. Just real quick, another thing we're starting to explore, I think a couple people in the chat have sort of hinted on doing something like this. But sort of going through COVID, some good has come out of it in a way where I think more people, including our donors, are more comfortable because they have to be connected, through Zoom and Teams and different things like that. So one of the things we're looking to do is connect our CEO with our donors on like a Zoom call to just get together, thank them for their support, but also kind of give them an update on the state of the organization, where we're going, what our vision is. And thinking about our CEO's time, for example, what would have taken probably 3 months to get 10 lunches with our CEO, we could have an hour call and connect with all those same donors in one sitting potentially. So we're exploring that as we go into the fall as well, and other things also.
Anything to add, Joel?
Everything we do, I think we stole from one of you guys, so it's been talked about.
And we all believe in that. So it's the best, highest form of flattery is to share your ideas. I'm even, guys, this video idea, I see that bubbling up in the chat, but perhaps in the base camp, if anybody would want to share their video of what they've done, their concept, throw that in there so that we can, and Joel, you can see what's popping in the other base camps, but just to see how you did it. My colleague Alicia's on the call and she's wanted us to do it for a long time. So she's asking right now, what software do you use to upload the videos, distribute, or do you keep it simple with YouTube? So thanks, Alicia, for asking that, because we're coming up on that situation ourselves. Anything else from the chat group? Let me just do a quick check. Beth is saying YouTube, Alicia. And one volunteer records them on their iPhone. So it's not, we don't need to be spending big money. Who knows, but getting those teachers' voices on those videos too, I think is extraordinarily important. We have about 17 minutes left to go. I thought we could talk a little bit about our strengths right now. And, Alice, you could have inferred this earlier prior to the call, but, and we talk about this here a lot. If you need 100,000 boxes, you just need to put it out in the universe, and then something good will happen to us. And we've been really lucky. I think for us at Teachers Treasures, we talk about this a lot. Our big gala was March 5th. And then the next day the world came to a cross. We were able to do a golf outing on July 13th this year at the beginning of our fiscal, which is normally not like that. It would have normally been in June. So it started our fiscal out hugely. I mean, great luck. So what's brought you joy? I guess you guys in Portland, there's not much bringing you joy right now, but what have you seen that has really lifted your hearts from the mission that we're serving and the craziness that's out there in the world right now? Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. I think for us, I think we've just been really proud as an organization to the way in which we were able to respond to the moment. This was unexpected for everybody. And again, this whole thing about the digital divide, it's always sort of been an undercurrent, but, with the pandemic, it's really hit us all in the face. So when you have 7th largest school district in the country, all those students being forced to try to learn from home on the fly. Do the kids have everything they need? Do they have the internet access? Do they have the devices? Do they have the supplies? It's just a need everywhere. And I think, and again, I give credit to our leader, Kim Joel, our CEO, we really sprung right into action, and we really not just sprung into action, but we had a plan. We figured out where we could fit. We partner really well with the school district. We said, okay, what can we do to support the district? Where are their voids? Where's the holes that they may have? And let's fit into that. And we just kind of had a laser focus. And I think it was just really good to see us respond that way. And what made it even better was how the community responded to the effort. Again, as I said at the beginning, they stepped up not only with support, our media partners, they gave us all kind of media opportunities to broadcast what we're doing, and they wrote checks, and they really stepped up to support. So I think it was just the way we responded to the need.
And then I think that really buoys you for the future, to be so proud to say, look what we did, we pulled this thing off, or in the case of some of you who've had to shut down and pivot, I mean, you got to be really proud of that. That's crazy hard work. And You'll be able to tell that story in 10 or 15 years. Remember back when we did this. Joel, what's been good for you guys? What was something that, makes you smile?
We've had a lot of really good, I guess, connections. So people, grantees, organizations that were struggling to ever really break into, maybe we could get the $2,000, $3,000 grants from them over time. We'd have those, try to connect with them. Suddenly after this, as many of you guys might remember in the craziness that was 2020, we had tornadoes about a week before the COVID thing really took hold. We got back for one day after the tornadoes before they canceled it for the rest of the year with COVID with everybody. But we were out there every day. We got about 15,000 student kits out this spring as we pivoted. But as a result of that, our, visibility in our community has skyrocketed to the point now where, we're getting asked to be part of major initiatives. And so we're really hopeful that where we were a small program and organization, that we are now.
Claire.
Yes, the mayor called us out at a conference the other day. And so, our name recognition is going way up. So we're really thankful that we were able to be there, and we're hoping that will help us bring bigger things in the future once the world gets to a little bit more stability.
Myra or Alice, what's been a good thing?
Oh, I would jump on the visibility factor. I think our efforts have increased our visibility and caused, some organizations or foundations to provide some funds without us even asking. There's reaching out, what can we do to help, which is really great, I think. And I think it's all because of the visibility factor and what we're doing and getting our name out there.
Awesome. Any slides for that, Alice?
Maybe. I'll look while I say, I also think that, we're waiting for this whole supply chain disruption to really yield something useful. And I'm not sure it has on any grand scale. It's not like anyone over-ordered school supplies. So we haven't seen that yet, but I feel like there's also been a lot of, obviously, education disruption, and we've always been pretty collaborative, but it hasn't always resulted in a lot. I guess we're good at making and keeping friends, but I feel like now some of the conversations we've had are going to allow us to really dig in deeper on some of our nonprofit collaborations, not just our partnerships with the schools, which often don't go any deeper because everything is already there. So a little vague on that, but I think it's really helped us as a small but flexible organization give us the momentum we need to really make some meaningful change that's harder when there's less disruption.
You guys have mentioned product a couple of times, and that was Dylan's question about, have you been using volunteers? Let me just find Dylan's question. Does anyone use volunteers to help with fundraising and product procurement in any way? If so, how? Anybody use volunteers?
We do. Myra, do you want to talk about how we use volunteers? It's pretty limited, but we do.
For fundraising and procurement, well, I think of it, would have a gala, a auction procurement, for products and things like that. So we'd have volunteers for those, because some people have a lot of connections. And then for fundraising, it's more on the acknowledgement side. At least this time around, last year we had 2 AmeriCorps people on board, and they helped me a lot. And this year I've had to rely more on volunteers to help me stuff envelopes, mail them out, all that.
Betsy Wilson's mentioning that they have a family volunteer calling their first-time donors to say thank you. She loves it, and we have gotten great feedback from the donor. That's lovely. That's very smart. We're actually building a new committee, which I'm sure seems ridiculous that we don't have it, but to really have a strategy on product when you talk about supply chain disruption, to start looking again with that product actually, but also all of these businesses that are going to go probably virtual, and so all these buildings that are going to be emptied that have, you know, a myriad of product in those that perhaps can get directed to us. So we're going to start assessing, working with a few of these operations that manage property, and to see if we can get in and get some of those things that might be sitting there. So that's a long time strategy, but we think that's going to have some real feedback for us. Great. Anybody do a big swing and a miss? Well, we won't end on this, but anybody has done a big swing and a miss on a fundraising initiative in the last 6 months that was a waste of time, although you may have learned from it, so it's not a waste of time? Anybody here from the panel have we need to share our failures as much as our accomplishments, right?
I'll go ahead and share. Actually, so it's interesting. This week, actually Wednesday, we had our very first virtual event. Our Empower Ed luncheon, typically it's an in-person luncheon we have every fall, and obviously with COVID, we made the decision to make it virtual. So the event was interesting. In the grand scheme of things, we blew our fundraising goal out of the water when you add everything up. So we had a very successful event in that way. But we don't know yet. It could just be the nature of the times or the nature of the event. We did really well on the front end with sponsorships and securing donations and funding on the front end. The day of ask, though, through the virtual experience was far below what we typically get at our in-person event. So kind of that aspect that you could kind of technically say that was a swing and a miss a little bit. We didn't know what to expect, but we definitely didn't expect it to be as far less than what we do in person. So that's something we're evaluating, especially if we have to continue doing virtual events moving forward where there's a fundraising component, is how to better engage the audience virtually in a way that can sort of urge people to give, because we did it kind of via text to give option. So that's kind of something I think that we would classify as a little bit of a swing and miss for us. But again, in the grand scheme, the event was still very successful.
Very interesting. I was on one yesterday that I watched the recording, and I was watching then the engagement level of how many people were on it. And you kind of mentioned at the beginning, please consider doing an ask, but more of us do it towards the end. Well, that's where you lose everybody. They're really more apt at the beginning to be present. So you got to really kind of, hook them with whatever that story is or that heartstrings. But that is an interesting piece, Mike, because I bet all of us are trying to figure out how to do a virtual. We had a big staff meeting today on it, but that will maybe for a different time. Alice, Myra, Joel, any swing or misses on a fundraising experience, or have you just been doing rock star work?
We definitely had some misses. We've had to do 3 events now virtually, and just the level of engagement just isn't there. Our funniest one is we had to move our big event, which is where we get a pretty big time celebrity to sing on the Opry stage for us, which is always our giant one. And we had to cancel that this year, and it was really sad. And so we had to get another artist, and we got a retired rocker who did it virtually and called us public television as opposed to public education the entire event. And there was nobody there to fix that the whole time. And so that was just painful as we're all just sitting in our offices, unable to fix that at all.
Oh, see, that's a good thing to know, Joel, because we're talking about doing a live virtual, and this is the kind of stuff, you just don't know. You can't edit on the fly, right?
Yep.
Oh, sorry to hear that, man. That's too bad.
I would say, I don't know if it's necessarily a miss, but we typically have all of these back to school events. And since back to school, there's no in-person in the Portland area, and teachers weren't even let in to the buildings till the last minute. There's no more than 10 people allowed in a lot of buildings. And we tried to put together a more robust, like, oh, and the sponsors will do a video and they'll help welcome the kids back to school. And, you know, the truth is we didn't really ever put together a solid plan. So it kind of happened sometimes and it kind of didn't others. I'm not going to chalk it up as a miss because we didn't even try. So as a big event, but you know what, but we didn't ignore it either. We explained to sponsors every step of the way why this was happening and how much we appreciated their support of everything being different this year. But we haven't really attempted anything large scale virtually yet.
Well, I think that might be a good topic for the next go around, because we're all going to be dancing into that pretty soon. One of the webinars that we held earlier was on virtual supplies drives, and I think that would be interesting to hear how everybody did. Alicia, our colleague that's on, we adopted the free platform called Give Butter, GIVEBUTTER, and we tiptoed into it. We were in kindergarten doing this thing. Learned a lot about bandwidth and uploading videos. Enough said on that. But we generated for us a lot of money. It was $37,000 in product, and that's a lot for us cash-wise at the beginning of the school year. And it's a fun platform because there's competitions between teams. And now that's continued, that if people want to do a virtual supplies drive, we've been using that. Thank you, Alicia, givebutter.com. And if you want to see our, Karen Calder raised $258K, not messing around over there in the Carolinas. But for us, you know, you got to find that right platform that works with your team. And we had 300 new donors out of that as well, which for us was huge, those virtuals. So why don't we do this? Why don't we, if you guys, if we can talk about through the platform to see if anybody on Basecamp, if anybody's interested in us doing the next one on virtual anything, virtual events, who's doing a virtual 5K, who's going to do a virtual gala, who's going to do virtual, maybe we can just do a whole segment on that. If folks out there in the participant land like that idea, let us know, because I think it's a big topic, and we're all doing it a little differently. But why recreate the wheel? If somebody's doing it well, you know, why don't we steal from each other? So Alice and Myra, any last minute things you want to share with us?
We can share we did put together PowerPoint with like images of our, you know, annual fundraising calendar and things like that. So as much as any of that's helpful,
Sure.
I don't know. I'm not even sure how we share that.
Well, you can share it in the chat box, but you could also, we can throw that, Alice, in Basecamp.
Okay, why don't I do that? And then everyone can I'll do that right after we get a phone. And then anyone who wanted to see like the spreadsheet of donor segmentation or anything, it'll all be in there.
Yeah. Mike or Joel, any last wisdom thoughts?
No, I just enjoyed the conversation today with my fellow panel members and you guys in the chat as well. I was taking notes and of everything you guys shared as well, different ideas and things to go to. So again, I feel like I got more out of this call than the little bit I probably gave to it, and I appreciate that.
Joel, you want to tell us what happens we're re-recording it, so people will be able to see all of this, correct?
Yeah, I'll get it up on YouTube, and I'll send that out on all the base camps. Give me till Monday. It is horribly slow to upload an hour-long video. So it usually takes several hours for the computer to work through that processing. But yes, I will have this all up and ready to roll, and I'll send out a link to that, and I'll have all the ones we did back in the spring, early summer.
Well, we just want to congratulate all of us for making it through to this point. Again, our friends that are getting hit by water or getting hit by fire, we're with you. And this is the greatest part of this network, is this, you know, these opportunities to talk and share and learn from each other, but just to know that there's somebody else out there for you all the time. If you have questions, or if you just need to, you know, vent about something, one of us, you know, from around the country is happy to help you. And use Basecamp through Kids in Need, and there's there's 3 different platforms, I believe, and I think that's a good tool that Kids in Need offers us. But we just wish you all well. And Joel and I'll talk about when we could maybe put this next one together. And if some of you have serious expertise on virtual events, bring it on, and we'll put you on the panel for next time. I'd love to mix it up a little bit. If you haven't been on a panel yet, let Joel and myself know, and we'll do it for you guys. But best of luck. Have a great weekend, everybody, and best of luck into your fall. Thanks so much.